Okay, so let's go through Monday Night Raw. So I'm going to talk about the show briefly, so as to not ramble on. All right, so show starts out with Dean Ambrose talking, and we have this back and forth between. I love how they described it on Review of Raw. They said this was the most anticipated fisting in wrestling history. Yeah, that was really the back and forth. They're finally coming to terms with, are they going to be the Shield again? Are they going to reunite? And eventually they do. It was a good dramatic swerves in this segment, but it did start to get old right towards the end, because it was like, okay, Rollins had his fist out, and Ambrose has his fist out. Rollins decided he's not into it anymore. Then they go back and forth a little bit. Then Rollins finally decides to put his fist out, but then Ambrose decides he doesn't want to do it. So it was like, guys, get on the same page. So finally, the attack by Sheamus and Cesaro was just on time. They came just in time to fulfill their part of the equation. Let me see. They gave an update on Ric Flair's medical issues. He was in a medically induced coma. He has had a successful surgery, they said, but he's not out of the woods yet, so it's kind of vague. So we don't know exactly what's going on with him now. As of right now, I think he's still okay, but it's still up in the air, it seems. So they have a number one contenders match with Sasha versus Nia Jax. I was anticipating this was built up from them both winning triple threat matches last week. And you see this lifeguard chair in the aisle, like right in front of the ring. So you obviously know that Alexa is going to sit on that. So they come out and make their entrances. Then Bliss gets up on the lifeguard chair. He's talking about it's like Cersei sitting on the Iron Throne. And I guess they were trying to give it that vibe, because like normally you would see a lifeguard chair, it's either like just plain wood or painted white. But this one, it was painted silverish, so it's like supposed to look like something more than just a lifeguard chair. But it's like a silver lifeguard chair with Alexa Bliss sitting on it watching the match. So it's an interesting bit of intrigue to add to the match. You're like, okay, she's scoping out her two opponents. I felt this match, surprisingly, looking at the recap from, I think this is from, I think it's from Cage Seats. I think that's the name of the website. But it wasn't, it was a 15-minute match, but it didn't feel that long at all. It, like, completely blew by. It was just like, yeah, I was interested the entire match. There was some good power stuff from Nia. She swung Sasha Banks into the wall like a rag doll. I like that. They replay that multiple times. And I really like the ending sequence. But that was the point in the match where I was like, man, this is kind of short. And then I'm looking back at like 15 minutes, man. It's just like it breezed by. I was into it. So that was I really enjoyed this match. She finished her off with the Bank statement. Like, she fights it off the first time, then she switches sides after she tries to reverse it. So I like that. Let me see. There was a few backstage things. I'm looking at this recap to see if there's anything noteworthy to pull out of here for my purposes. Saying the Hardys aren't competing at SummerSlam. I don't think he ever landed on giving them a match. Let me see. So Curtis Axel was supposed to face Jason Jordan. We'll see that ends up changing. But yeah, okay. So the ref comes in to interrupt this backstage segment by telling Kurt Angle that we have a problem with Bray Wyatt and Finn Balor, and they go to a commercial, And then when they come back, Bray Wyatt and Finn Balor are still fighting. And it's like that entire 2 minutes or 4 minutes, however long the commercial break lasted, Kurt Angle was not able to make it over there and break up this fight before we came back from a commercial. Like, the referee tells you, hey, we've got a problem, there's a fight backstage, and you let that fight go on for 4 minutes until you start, finally break it up. But yeah, so he breaks up the fight by giving them exactly what they want. It's like, hey, you guys want to fight? Well, SummerSlam's going to happen early. You guys are going to go out there. And I figured they should go out, like, immediately. Like, they're fighting right now. Like, you should say, and their matches right now. And it's no holds barred, street fight, falls count anywhere. Like, that should have been just the call right there, because they're already in the middle of a fight. So you just kick it off right there. But no, you have to wait for some other jobbers to get out of the way first. Let me see what else. The Drifter comes out to do a song, and I really wish they would just call him the Drifter, because that would eliminate all this controversy about his first and last name, or not having a last name, or whatever. So Elias comes out and starts to do his song, and they announce him as, ladies and gentlemen, here's Elias. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Elias. Who wants to walk with Elias? Elias, Elias, Elias. So they do all that, making sure they never say Samson. But then R-Truth comes out, and Elias he jumps him, because he doesn't like other people singing in the middle of his segment, or I don't know why he jumps him, but so they weren't scheduled to have a match apparently, because this didn't, like, a ref didn't come out and start ringing the bell. It's just like R-Truth was just interrupting, I guess. But so Elias jumps him, and during this, like, beatdown segment, Michael Cole, who started out the segment by saying Elias, 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 and he says, oh, you don't want to mess with Elias Sampson. Sampson is going to town on R-Truth. Man, this is what you can expect from a guy like Elias Sampson. And he says Sampson, he says Elias Sampson like 6 times. And I know Michael Cole screws up sometimes, but I don't think he screwed up 6 times. I feel like maybe Vince McMahon on his earpiece called an audible. He's like, you know what? I don't like the sound of this. We're bringing back his last name. And it feels like that happened on the fly here, because Michael Cole, if you go back and watch that segment, and it stood out to me because I was like, I really hate this Elias name. It just sounds too abrupt, and it doesn't fit. It's like Samson cutting his hair off. You cut Elias' Samson off. But so Cole calls him Samson like 6 times, but then at the very end of the segment, he does say whatever Elias, and he doesn't say Samson. So I don't know if that was legitimately a mistake, but he said it 6 times, and then Corey Graves actually chimed in and said it once. So I'm thinking maybe there was an audible there. Maybe next week he will be Elias Sampson once again, or maybe he's gonna maybe there's gonna be a pre-show match, because SummerSlam is gonna be an extremely long show. It's gonna be a 4-hour show with a 2-hour pre-show, so they need stuff to fill it up. So maybe they're gonna have some kind of maybe Kalisto's gonna crawl out of the woodwork, out of whatever dumpster he's in, and have a mask versus last name match. So if Elias wins, he gets his last name back and unmasks Kalisto. Anyway, so they bring out the shark cage for this next segment. Big Cass comes out to talk, and he's getting nuclear heat, Vicky Guerrero level heat. So that's what you want for this type of character at this point, I would say. I was worried that Cass wasn't going to be able to handle it very well, but I think he got into the swing of it when he decides, like, you know what, I'm just going to talk over you. Like, I feel like if I was a wrestling heel, that would be the most perfect scenario ever for me, and I would love it. Because that's the thing, is like, if you know what your role is, you're like, you should relish it. You're like, you know what, it doesn't matter how loud you yell, I'm gonna keep talking because I'm the man around here. It's like you have to like soak that in, because that's exactly what you want. It's like they're not supposed to want to sit there and listen to you intently. You're not the good guy. They want to see whoever back there come out and beat your ass. because that's what your role is to get people angry. So I feel like he could have reveled in that a little more. I feel like even Roman Reigns did a better job at that when he did his famous "this is my yard now." Like he let them get all their boos in, and then he just completely talked through them. So I like that. But so Cass, he's getting the hang of it at this point. So he does a lot of talking about how he's the new big guy in town. Enzo comes out and pretty much says nothing, and then introduces the Big Show. So they brawl a little bit, but I think the club, the Bullet Club or the Good Brothers, they immediately come out and they start attacking Enzo and the Big Show, and Gallows is like taking forever. He like takes off his belt and he's like looping it into a thing. I'm like, so he's gonna fashion his belt into like handcuffs for the Big Show or something. And like I was wondering what he was doing. And then eventually he just hooks one around the Big Show's hand, wraps it up, pulls it into the shark cage, and they slam it on. And then they just keep stomping on his hand. So it's kind of trying to take out his main weapon in his knockout punch. So that was some good psychology there, setting up a handicap for the Big Show in their match at SummerSlam. Even though I have no anticipation for this match, but you've thrown a wrinkle into the equation. Like, okay, now what can the Big Show do? His hand is broken. Cruiserweight title match, Neville versus Tozawa. There wasn't much to say about this because I don't think it was a very long match. It was entertaining for as short as it was. It kept my attention, but they did the title change, and I wasn't expecting that. I had suspicion because of like, why are they doing the actual title match now? But I guess that was going along with the theme of SummerSlam coming early. So they did this title change in this match. It's a good moment for Titus worldwide, and the explanation they gave on Review of Raw was good because it's like, well, more people are going to watch it on Raw than they would seeing it in whatever pre-show position it's in on the pay-per-view. So it's good to have this out of the way, and maybe you'll get some of those people paying attention to the rematch when it comes up on SummerSlam or on the pre-show to SummerSlam. So far, Titus worldwide is a success. If your metric is Tozawa, like Apollo Crews is like completely falling off the map. He's like gave up on him. Was like, you know what? You're just gonna be a cheerleader for my other guy. Like, this guy has promise. Still don't know what I'm doing with you, Apollo. So that was good for Tozawa. Yeah, so we'll see. Alright, so Mickie James and Emma have some interaction backstage leading into what is going to be a match, and that is, that's going to be whatever. One thing I noticed during this backstage segment is starting to see like a couple things I've noticed about Mickie James. Number one, you can see she's getting up there in age. I mean, she is a mom. You can't expect everybody. I mean, her body still looks good, but her face, you can see a little bit of the lines in the face and the neck, but you can clearly also see the surgery that she's had. And I'm pretty sure she's had more facial surgery since leaving WWE, because I don't remember her looking like she had anything, at least anything drastic while she was in the WWE. But I don't notice these things all the time. So we have our match with Bray Wyatt versus Finn Balor, and when you think back on it, like, they had to wait a little while and simmer down a little bit before they finally had their match. So they have this match. It was let me see. So they go back and forth a little while. This was a legit match. They had some back and forth. There was false finishes. They ran through all of their spots, and I was into it. I felt like this would have been a serviceable match if it was happening on SummerSlam. People would have thought it was a decent match. So I think everybody accomplished what they need to accomplish in this match. And then you have Bray Wyatt pull off the sneaky maneuver at the end, but still gets pretty much a clean finish. So I could see when they were booking this match, and when you see Balor comes out as his regular self, it was like, I already knew this was a way to fast forward to Bray needing to use the demon at SummerSlam. I knew that was where they were going with that. So I was like, okay, they're going to have Bray win this one. Then Balor's going to realize, like, oh, I need a little bit more to take on this spoopy character. So let me pull out my spoopy character. So that's how they finish it off. He gets the win. But instead of the match just ending there, we get a derp, and then the lights go out, and then back on again, and Bray is holding a bucket, and Finn Balor is now in the corner. So Bray takes this bucket and pours it all over Finn Balor. It turns out to be, it looks like the old style Ministry of Darkness / Brood Bloodbath. But they didn't do it like the Brood used to do their Bloodbath, like where the lights would go out and then they would come back on, the guy would already be covered in blood. That's a better effect, because it's like, you don't want to see the guy just pulling out a bucket and pouring it over him, because it makes it very clear that it's not blood. But I guess in this PG era, you have to make it clear that this guy is not legitimately bleeding all over the ring, because it looks like a murder scene. So you have to show, like, hey guys, this is a bucket. This is not human blood. It's not even animal blood. We're not even going to call it blood of any kind. This is just some kind of paint. And then he pours it over his head. And kids, don't try this at home. So they describe it as this thick, acidic, viscous fluid. I'm like, sounds kind of like blood you're describing. But they want to make sure they don't say it's blood. But like, the imagery is bloody. The imagery of him falling all over the ring and wiping his face is like, that's what you would want if you were trying to convey that it's like he was stunned by being covered in blood. Because like, otherwise, if he knows his paint and everybody else knows his paint, then why is he selling like, oh my god, this is all over me? So it's like, hey, I'm embarrassed, let me get up, stand up, and walk out of the ring and go shower. But he's like, ah, and like, and I guess he's kind of selling that maybe it's burning his eyes or something. But it's just like, the imagery you want to convey there is that he's covered in blood, but you want to make sure you backtrack off of that for the sponsors and the kids. So whatever. Let me see. So then they finally have the Mickie James versus Emma match. There was no real interest in this match, I don't think, from the crowd or anybody watching at home. I doubt. Emma gets some offense for a while, but then Mickie James comes back and hits the lightest Mick kick that I've ever seen, then pins her. It looked like she straight up missed, but maybe she hit it just grazingly. But you know, that kind of makes Emma look like a pile of crap. So there's that. Next is supposed to be a non-title match with The Miz versus Jason Jordan, because you got turned around. It's supposed to be Curtis Axel. Then Miz says, I'll fight him. So they come out and have what they think is going to be their match. It kind of falls apart quickly, and then interference happens with the Miz Taraj, and the Hardys come out to even the equation, because they were involved in that backstage segment. And I guess from that 30-second interaction they had with Jason Jordan, they figured he was a good kid and they wanted to support him, since also they didn't have anything else going on. So they came out, and this gets turned into a tag match, player. So this is Jason Jordan and the Hardys versus the Miz Taraj. So this match ended up being more interesting than I was going to give it credit for going into it. I was like, I'm not going to really care about this at all. But they built the excitement. They got the heat on Matt Hardy for a while. They were working him over. Then they finally gets I think Jason Jordan gets involved. Then I think he gets the hot tag to Jeff. Jeff hits one of they, and I like how they spotted it on commentary, and Corey Graves said it was like he hits the Whisper in the Wind, and it was like the most perfect landing of Whisper in the Wind ever, because he legit he lands on him as if he was hitting the Molly go round. And I'm sure nobody watching this remembers that, but look up Molly Holly. She was a diva from back in the day when the Hurricane was around. But Molly Holly as Mighty Molly, she had a move called the Molly go round. She probably did it as Molly Holly also. It's funny. She went from being Molly Holly, who was like Crash Holly's cousin or whatever, Hardcore Holly and Crash Holly's cousin, and then she went into being Mighty Molly, the superhero, hanging out with the Hurricane and Rosie. She was always like part of a 3-person team. It seemed like that seemed to be the key. But she did the Molly go round, was basically like a flipping senton, and she would land it just like that. So for Jeff Hardy, who usually hits the Whisper in the Wind the exact same way, for him to land in that perfect seated position and to keep that as a pin position, that was perfect. It's like, if he could rely on that being the way he lands it every time, then that should just be his finish. Because it's like, it's kind of the best of both worlds of like the Swanton and the Whisper in the Wind. It's just like he's instantly in a pinning position, like just count it. But anyway, so I enjoyed that little thing because those little things stand out to me. Also, the match ends with the Swanton, another perfect landing for Jeff Hardy. He just lands on him and then hooks the leg. So that was it for that match. Then they announced it officially that it's going to be the Demon Finn Balor versus Bray Wyatt at SummerSlam, because it wasn't spelled out enough for us. We needed a little more detail to make sure you drove that home. And they also said that Tozawa and Neville are rematching at SummerSlam. You could have predicted that. So the final segment was Brock Lesnar, Samoa Joe, Braun Strowman, and Roman Reigns having a face-to-face confrontation ahead of their SummerSlam Fatal 4-Way match. And Paul Heyman does some uncharacteristic underselling of his champion, if I would say so, because he keeps giving the out for like, okay, if Brock loses or when they get him out of the equation and sneak the win, we're gonna leave. It's just like, you shouldn't sell your champion as if, like, you shouldn't even give the possibility that he might lose. But even worse, you're giving the probability that he's going to lose because he's being screwed, and then we're gonna quit. Like, that's not a babyface thing to do, but that's what he's doing. Then everybody comes out one at a time and they give their little threats and say, this is why I'm gonna win the match at SummerSlam, and there's nothing you could do about it, big guy. So Samoa Joe comes out and gives his thing. Braun Strowman comes out and gives his little speech. Roman Reigns comes out and I think he says a little something. Then it quickly devolves. No, actually, I think Roman Reigns, I don't think he says anything, come to think of it. I think he might just go immediately for the spear on Samoa Joe. Because I know it got to that point quickly. I was like, whoa, that escalated quick. So he spears Samoa Joe. Braun Strowman hits his power slam on Roman, and then there's the face off. And it's funny, like they mentioned this on Review of Raw, but it's like Roman Reigns hits the spear on Samoa Joe. Security, who's lined up outside the ring, by the way, they do nothing. Braun Strowman picks up Roman Reigns, hits his power slam on the guy who's supposed to be the man in the company. Security does nothing. And then Braun Strowman, after power slamming the guy, stands up and looks over at the Beast, and they just have a stare down. Immediately security is triggered into action. It's like, you know what, we gotta stop this. We can't let this happen. So that's clearly the showdown that they're building anticipation for and what they're all leading into. And then, like, you know, as these segments go, they have to throw all the security out of the ring. And some of these security, you know, they're usually indie workers, the indie wrestlers who are just getting their shot at being on television. But some of these guys are like really bad at bumping over the top rope specifically. It was just like a couple of rough incidents. Like this one guard with the long hair, he takes this like exaggerated bump, but like 10 seconds after he was struck by a fist from Brock Lesnar. Then this bigger guy, and I could understand just logistically, like, oh, I was not ready to take this back bump over the top rope. So it takes him a couple tries before I think Brock clotheslines him over the top. And then the rest of it is pretty smooth. After they get all the security out, they still kind of stare down each other. Like, they don't immediately start throwing hands after they get the security out. So then the roster comes out, like all the jobber roster, you know, like people like Kurt Hawkins and Goldust and the non-injured member of the Revival. So like all these like tag guys come out to split them up. So that's how they end the show. Well, with just after they're taking a cue from SmackDown last week, just after the copyright bug pops up, knowing that we're about to fade out within seconds, they finally break through the crowd and start actually punching each other. So we have the show officially fade with them throwing hands. So that was a good way to end Raw, building anticipation for the pay-per-view, for the Raw side of the pay-per-view. So, yeah, this when I think back on this episode of Raw, I don't think they had a lot of matches, but the matches that they did have, they kept my attention, and the wrestling was pretty good on there as far as I can remember. So yeah, so my takeaways from the show are that I didn't anticipate Sasha Banks winning this match and going into the women's title match. I thought maybe they were going to do a battle of the best friends, but still Sasha got the spot in a convincing win over Nia Jax, where Nia still looked good, so I like that going into the pay-per-view. They've officially announced the Shield versus the Bar, so I like that. There's more anticipation for that match than I ever thought I would have had, and that's because when you build up a storyline and make it seem important, then people feel like it's important. So those are some of the highlights for the leading out of this into the pay-per-view. The Fatal 4-Way match I obviously have anticipation for, possibly for the implications outside if Brock leaves, or just for the quality of the match and the collisions and the interactions of each of the four guys, period. So yeah, I'm anticipating SummerSlam more now than I was before watching Raw. So that's then they did their job. So with that, let me know what you thought of Monday Night Raw in the comment section below. What were your highlights and lowlights? Also, are you looking forward to SummerSlam? Let me know. And if you liked my review, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more of my wrestling content. I also talk about the show Big Brother. I also talk about movies and other TV shows, and I have a podcast. A lot of stuff on my channel. Post something new every day of the week, so when you subscribe, hit that notification bell for instant alerts. With that, I will say thanks for watching, and that's all you get for today.